Welcome everybody to RBCM at Outside, our Earth Day edition. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you today on Earth Day, and it's not raining again, yay. So my name is Liz Crocker, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. And we've been doing these RBCM at Outside programs since the pandemic last year, when we couldn't get out and meet with you in person. We still can't, obviously. So we've kept them going, and we're going to be going at least till the end of June. And so we do these programs every second. We've changed now to Thursdays, every second Thursday at noon. And it's a webinar format, so we can't see or hear you, but we hope to hear from you through the chat, which you can use on Facebook if you're joining us there, or in the Zoom room. And my colleague Jenny Arnold is in the room, and she'll help get questions and comments to us. And we'll save time at the end for questions. But first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that here at Mill Hill Regional Park, where I am on southern Vancouver Island, we're in the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, also known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nation. And most of my programs have been in this territory, and it's exquisitely beautiful. And I've been just so happy to be able to share many of these spaces with you. And today is no different. It is really a special spot. And that's what's so great about the regional park system we have on southern Vancouver Island, because there are just really accessible places to get to out in nature where you really feel like you're getting away from things. This one's not super great if you have mobility issues, because you do have to hike up a trail. But there's many other parks that are really accessible to folks. So yes, always grateful to be in this territory. And I wanted to mention that the next program we have coming up in 2 weeks is RBCM at Outside, and we're going to be talking about a BioBlitz. May is the BioBlitz month. Emma Jane's going to be talking about BioBlitz in a minute, or towards the end of the program, but we're going to be partnering with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants again, who we worked with before, and they are doing a month-long backyard BioBlitz. And Jenny's going to post a link there where you can get some information and sign up now. Make a free account at iNaturalist, and classrooms can do this, families can do this, individuals, and all they're asking is get outside in your own neighborhood and take pictures or sketch nature, wildlife that you see all around you, and send them in. And there's instructions on how to do that. And the idea is we want to see how much of the biodiversity globally we can get the month of May. So that's really exciting. So hope you'll join us for that next month on May 6th. And so for today's program, I'm outside here with CRD Parks naturalist Emma Jane, who I'm going to turn it over to her in a minute. But I also have Dr. Ken Marr in the room, who is curator of Botany at the Royal BC Museum. He's been in a number of these outside programs. And so Ken's going to come on a little bit and give us a little bit of a landscape history of the area here. But for now, I'm going to turn over my camera, flip it around. Emma Jane is waiting, and I'm going to pop my mask back on because I might get a little bit close to her, but we're outside. There's Emma Jane. You can go ahead, take your mask off. I'll pop mine on, and I'm gonna let you lead us on a little wildflower amble, and Jenny will let us know if we have any connection issues.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay.
So hi everybody, my name is Emma Jane, and I'm a park naturalist with CRD Regional Parks. So for anybody who doesn't know, the CRD stands for the Capital Regional District. So it's the regional government here on southern Vancouver Island. And the CRD provides lots of different services to the people of the region. So some of those include providing good, clean drinking water, running the Heartland landfill. And the CRD also has a great system of regional parks. So there's 31 regional parks and 3 regional trails. And we are so excited and happy to be able to welcome you to one of those regional parks today. So here we are at Mill Hill Regional Park in Langford. And this is a really remarkable park because up here at the summit, we're in an ecosystem called the Garry Oak ecosystem. And this is one of the most endangered ecosystems in Canada. So there's only 5% left of the Garry Oak ecosystem here in British Columbia. So today we're going to be looking a little bit about what kinds of wildflowers are growing in the Garry Oak meadow. We're also going to talk a little bit about how some of them are really important, both culturally and ecologically to the ecosystem. So like Liz said, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that we're on the traditional land of the Lekwungen speaking people. And, it's a great privilege and, very honored to be able to live and work in their territory. So we'll get started looking at some wildflowers around here. So the first one we want to show you is a little golden treasure. So Liz, if you can turn around, we're going to show you just these little tiny wildflowers that grow very close to the ground. wildflower here is called spring gold. They're one of the earliest wildflowers to come up in the spring. You can see them as early as March, and they're really beautiful. They've got little clusters of bright yellow flowers. I often see lots of little ants and bugs getting the pollen from the flowers. And the neat thing about these is they're actually in the carrot family. So I don't know, Liz, if you can try to get a good view of the leaves of the spring gold. You'll see they're kind of very small, delicate, lots of little branches.
Oh, they do look carroty.
Yeah, so if you like have any carrots growing in your garden, take a look at the leaves. They're kind of similar to the way that these leaves look. They're because this wildflower is in the carrot family.
I did not know that.
So these are one of my favorites because these are often one of the first wildflowers that you'll see come up in the spring. And so whenever I see spring gold, you know, end of February, early March, I always get really excited because I know that spring is on the way.
They're
so this
so
spring
bright.
gold is a great sign of spring coming, early sign of spring.
Beautiful. Okay.
All right, so now, Liz, why don't we actually turn around and show this beautiful like camas back here?
Mm-hmm.
So the Garry Oak Meadow has, you know, very open, usually kind of rocky. So a lot of the wildflowers we see today grow really well in this kind of rocky terrain.
Hang on a sec, Emma Jane. Yes, somebody asked, are we saying spring gold? Yes, spring gold. That's, thank you. Good question. So that's the common name.
That's the common name.
Bet you Ken Marr might be able to type the Latin name in the chat.
Utriculatum.
Oh, let's get Emma saying that.
It's Lomatium utriculatum. Now, I may be pronouncing that wrong, but
thank you. That's awesome, Emma Jane. Okay, back to our Camis here. Oh, thank you, Ken.
Great.
Ken's put the writing in there. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So we've got this beautiful, this is a great kind of showing of how the Garry Oak has a very open meadow. So a lot of the wildflowers that grow here really need this kind of open, very sunny. They do well in kind of rocky habitats, kind of shallower soils. So the flower that we're showing here is called Camis. So Camis is one of the main flowers that you'll see in a Garry Oak meadow. And it's very important culturally to many First Nations people. So underground, these Camis flowers have a big a bulb. So it almost looks a bit similar to an onion, but a bit longer, kind of oval shaped. And this bulb could be dug up and cooked into a food. So you know how a lot of European cultures, they use potatoes as like a starchy food staple. But for a lot of First Nations here on the coast, they use the Camis bulb as kind of this starchy food staple. So the Camis and the Garry Oak Meadow is incredibly important culturally for feeding the people. So to identify the Camis, we can maybe get another close-up here.
I was getting distracted, Emma Jane. There's some birds in some spring-like behavior doing some courting over there, I think.
Lovely.
Oh, it's such a nice
Such a beautiful day.
Okay, here we go.
All right, so we've got our Camis here. So to identify the Camis, it's got kind of 6 purple petals. Now, sometimes the Camis can also be white in color, but you have to really watch out because there's another kind of Camis called death Camis. And as you can tell by the name, it's very deadly. So the bulb looks almost the same as the edible kind. And so it can be very dangerous if you accidentally get the bulb of the death Camis. So here in regional parks, there is no harvesting of any of the plants because these are protected areas. So, you know, no picking or harvesting from the parks. And the reason for that is just to protect these beautiful places. But traditionally, the Camis would have been harvested as a staple food. So we've got the 6 dark purple petals. They can sometimes be white. And then they have these 5 long stamens. So that's the male part of the flower.
The yellow part?
Yeah, so the yellow part at the tip there is where the flower makes the pollen. So that's the part that when a bee comes to pollinate, that little yellow part kind of comes off as a dust, and it can get stuck on the bees, and that when the bees then go to the next flowers, they transfer the pollen from flower to flower, allowing them to go to seed.
It'd be great if we saw a bee doing that.
Yeah, so the death Camis looks quite different than this Camis here. The petals are a lot smaller and they're white and they grow in these kind of little clusters. If anybody's ever, grown an onion in their garden, it almost looks similar to that, like a little cluster of white flowers at the top. Whereas this Camis here, the purple Camis, has the kind of longer dark purple Petals.
And Ken's just put the Latin name in there of
Great.
Camis as well. Thanks,
That's
Ken.
great.
Yeah. What I love about Camis is the different colors as it's growing. Like when the petals are still closed up, that deep blue is so beautiful. And then it opens into that purple.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. Gorgeous.
We also have behind us here some Camis right before they've opened up. So why don't we take a look at that?
Yeah.
I love comparing
That's what
how
I'm
the
talking about.
wildflowers change throughout the season. So yeah, maybe get a close up there. These are a little asparagus. So the Camis is actually in the asparagus family. Yeah, so
it's asparagus-y.
Yeah, I know, doesn't it look asparagus-y? I find it reminds me of that.
Yeah, see if we get some of the color here. Sorry if they're blowing in the wind, so it's hard to get it to stop and focus. Gorgeous.
It's beautiful. A lot of the Camis is blooming up here. Even just a week ago, most of these Camis were still closed. So things really change quickly in the spring.
Well, and you mentioned the garry oak habitat that these are part of. Mm-hmm. And so we're right in front of an arbutus tree here, but right behind you is a nice little stand of garry oak here. Just make sure folks can see that. That's really distinctive on that southern Vancouver Island, this habitat here with the garry oaks. And covered in the lichen. I love it when they're covered in lichen like that. So mystical looking.
And I love when the little fresh leaves are just starting to come out in the spring. The bright green.
Mm-hmm. Really, what a flush of color up here, hey, for spring. I'm just gonna pan out there.
Lovely views.
So there we're looking south towards now. Probably it's a bit foggy over that way, but I think we're looking towards the Olympic Mountains back there. Is that right, Emma Jane?
Yeah, the Olympic Mountains, over in Washington.
We just can't see them right now. Okay, what else have we got here?
All right, well, let's walk a little ways to our next little patch. We have.
Did you want to show? Oh no, you've got a patch. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll have a little patch. Yep. But you know, an interesting thing about the garry oak trees, Liz, is one of the ways that the First Nations would keep these garry oak ecosystems open and good habitat for the wildflowers is they would do prescribed burning. So they would light little fires quite frequently to keep any trees or bushes from growing over and taking over the meadow. So by practicing, frequent small fires, they were able to keep these meadows very open and great habitat for these wildflowers.
Yeah, imagine the expertise. They're here for thousands of years. The expertise of how to work that land. I just saw a question come up that I missed most of it, Jenny. Could you repeat it?
Yes, I can. Is loco weed in the Camis family?
Pardon?
Is loco weed in the Camis family?
Loco weed.
If you don't, Ken might know.
I'm afraid I don't know. Yeah.
Ken might know. If Ken knows, he could. No, pea family.
Pea family.
Okay. Thank you. Good question.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken.
All right. So our next little patch of wildflowers that we can show you is right down here. So we are seeing a few of the species we've already talked about.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We've got some more of the spring gold, more Camis. But you'll also notice in this little patch, there's another different wildflower we haven't talked about yet.
These pinky ones.
These beautiful little pink ones, they're called sea blush. And they have kind of one little cluster of flowers up at the top. And then they have kind of two leaves that come out from the stem at the base. So that's a good way to kind of identify them.
See if I can.
And they often grow in little clusters with lots of sea blush all in one area. But then you can also see them sometimes like this, where they're spread out with other different wildflower species.
Oops. Sorry, messed up the screen there. I was trying to show the petals there, down there.
Yeah, really beautiful kind of small petals in little clusters.
Gorgeous pink color. Can we see the stamens on those ones? Or are they going to be too small, maybe?
I think they might be too small, yeah.
Oh, and that one is sea blush, right?
Sea
it's
blush.
S-E-A.
S-E-A
is the common, and I bet Ken will type in the Latin for us. You know the Latin, Emma Jane? Put you on the
not off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Plectridis congesta.
Oh, yes, you're right. Ken just put Plectris. Way to go. And I did see a question came across the screen, I think from one of the teachers in Kelowna. Was that right, Jenny? Is there a question?
Yes. So there's a question of how does plants, specifically wildflowers, vary in different parts of BC, if any?
Ooh,
That's a really good question.
that might be a question for Ken.
Yeah, definitely varies a lot. Like right now, like for these flowers we're showing you today, they're all specific to the Garry Oak ecosystem. But even like the flowers we're showing you today, it changes a lot with the season. So if you were to come visit a Garry Oak meadow later, like in the spring or in the summer, the wildflowers here would be completely different. Yeah.
So changing with even the within
Even
a
just
season,
within the
within a season, and then elevation and latitude.
Yeah, the type of ecosystem it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe when we get to Ken in a few minutes, he might even be able to add to that answer a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, great question.
Okay, so before we, it's almost time to go to Ken. Do you want anything else to show us?
One more wildflower species I'd love to show. Just over here, there's a little bunch of them in there, Liz.
Ooh, and there's an animal in there, and I bet I know what it is.
Oh, I'm seeing lots of
Ooh,
bees.
it's
Lots
a
of bees
snake. I thought it was a
wildflowers.
lizard. You
And
guys,
there is
the
a
garter
garter
snake.
snake.
Oh, I don't know if you could
Did
see
you get
it.
that on camera?
I bet I didn't.
Oh, that was an amazing little garter snake just slithered back into the trees.
That's nice to see on Earth Day. That makes me happy. And
That
here
is
comes a
great.
buzzing
Got a
bee.
little bumblebee. All right, so this next wildflower species here that Liz is showing is called a shooting star. These ones are really, really neat. So to identify them, they look a little bit like a cartoon drawing of a shooting star. So you can see at the tip there, it's kind of like a black pointy cone. And then there's 5 kind of purple petals that kind of trail behind. So the petals kind of look a bit like the tail of a shooting star that's trailing behind as the star flies across the sky. And one of my favorite things about this wildflower is that after they're pollinated, normally the flowers kind of hang down with the black cone pointing down. But after they're pollinated, the flowers start to turn to face upward as they're getting ready to turn into a seed pod. So they kind of turn up to face the sky, shooting stars facing the sky.
Nice. So that one there on the right has been pollinated then.
Yeah, it's probably turning up and getting ready to turn into a seed pod.
Those are such a pretty color too. And sorry about the shadow.
And at the base, at the ground, we might not be able to show it on the camera, but they have a little kind of cluster of kind of oval broad leaves that kind of come out from the base of the stems of the flowers.
Well, and I know Adria was going to show us a diagram slide, so I don't know if she has pictures of shooting star.
Time to pull that up. So we have a little diagram of all the different parts of a wildflower. So we're thinking we have a little ways to walk here. So what we'll do is as we go, I'll just kind of talk a bit about some of the different flower parts. That way you'll know what to look for when you're identifying the wildflower. So some of the words I've been using here, we'll pull them up on the diagram and really talk about what they are and what to look for.
That sounds good.
All right.
Okay. Oh, Adria's pulling it up. I'm just having a little trouble with my camera. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. There's the slide with all the parts. Yeah.
All right, great. So we'll start with, well, the more basic one that I'm sure everyone knows already. So the petals. So that's the part of the flower that's often very brightly colored. And that is so that it will attract pollinators to the flower. So the flowers want the pollinators to come because it helps them to be able to go to seed. So we've got the petals. That's a good thing to look for in the flower. So with the spring gold, we were looking for the small petals and little clusters. And then with the Camis, you can count the number of petals and you can look at the arrangement, the way the petals are shaped around the center of the flower. So lots of ways you can use the petals to identify. You can also use the color of the petals. But again, you have to be careful because some wildflowers of the same species can grow in different colors. So even the sea blush sometimes can be bright white, I've seen. So good to use many different clues to help you identify.
Right. Thanks, Emma Jane. I saw a question there, Jenny, something about Brentwood Bay.
Yes, someone just had a comment that Gorge Park in Brentwood Bay is almost the same as Mill Hill with the Garry Oaks and wildflowers, but easier access.
Oh,
that's a great comment. Okay.
Nice tip. Thank you.
Yeah.
In Brentwood Bay. Thank you.
And there was also a question of all the names that that flowers were given. How did these flowers get their names? The names that are difficult to pronounce.
Oh, the scientific names?
Perhaps. That
yes,
might be
I believe so.
Yeah.
So scientific names has to do with the biological classification of the plants. So like the first word, so let's do like sea blush, for example. So Plectritis is like the genus. And then the second part is like the species. So yeah, it has to do with how the scientists classify, you know, what family genetically the plant is in. And then the common names are often, you know, have to do with the way the flower looks. So like with sea blush, I mean, this is kind of just kind of what I think, but I find it looks, you know, kind of almost like little sea foams. And I do think sea blush also sometimes grows well on the side of the ocean, but you know, it's like a little blushing sea coast.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thanks for that, Imogen. So Ken, why don't we have a moment with Dr. Ken Marr, who's going to give us a little landscape history background of this place that we're in. Ken, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You can put your camera on if you like.
What amazing technology. Yeah, camera's on, I believe.
Yep, there you are.
Yeah,
hi.
So yeah, Liz, actually, it's really nice to see Mill Hill. I used to live just down the hill on Atkins Drive, and I've not been there this spring.
Beautiful.
Obviously, I need to get there soon. So you've been looking at how the vegetation looks like right now. And I'm going to share a few images of what we think the landscape looked like 10 to 12,000 years ago, and then we'll come into the present. So I'm wondering, some of you in school today, how would you imagine the landscape to look 10,000 years ago, and what kind of plants do you think were there? And what evidence would you have for those plants? Anyone have any ideas?
That's a big question.
So this is an aspect of biology called Paleobotany, paleo meaning old, and botany, obviously, you know what botany means. So there's a way to reconstruct the way we think the vegetation looked way, way back in history. So
Someone wrote down possibly tropical.
Possibly tropical. Yeah, if you want to go back around 50 million years, for sure. The Earth's climate was much warmer, and but I'm just talking maybe 12,000 years ago. What was happening 12,000 years ago in the Northern Hemisphere? What did it look like then?
Someone said lots of trees.
Lots of trees, okay. But it was really, really cold.
Ice Age.
Ice Age, yeah. Okay, so we think people who specialize in this, not so much me, believe that the evidence, and based on lots of good dates, is that there was an ice age multiple times during the Pleistocene. Ice covered the province, all of North America, all of Canada anyway. And it started about 26,000 years ago, and it lasted till about 13 or 14,000 years ago, depending on where you are. So from the top of Mill Hill, I'm going to share my screen now. And if you have the opportunity to visit the museum, there is a mural. Did I get the wrong one? I think I got the wrong one.
No, we can see it, Ken.
You can see it. Fabulous. Yeah. Okay, good. So this is what, this is a view of what the landscape looked like about 10,000, 12,000 years ago from Mill Hill. So this is in the gallery on the second floor in the museum. And as you can see, there are some trees in the lower part there, but they're very stunted. The climate was cold and the growing season was very short, unlike now. So there's a whole area of paleobotany where people take samples of sediments from lakes. And I'll show a little bit of how that's done. And they take a core, they kind of pound a hollow tube into the lake bottom, and they pull up a sediment sample. And that's what you're seeing on the left-hand side there. And speckled all the way through that, you can see a little piece of charcoal. And those pieces of charcoal are datable. So now you have a kind of a calendar going way back in time, and the different layers are different layers of sediment. And in those sediment are pollen grains that fell on this lake where this sediment was taken, not far from, this actually come from the city of Victoria watershed. So not far away, people pounded a tube into the bottom of the lake and pulled up this sediment core. So on the left-hand side of this graph, you can see age, and the very bottom of the graph is 14,000 years ago, and they were able to date it because of all those little flecks of charcoal. And up in the very top, it's in the present. And if you look across, you can see those dark bars that get big and small over time. So if we go way, way back in time, about 14,000 years ago, and you look on the far left, lodgepole pine was one of the first plants that was present after the ice melted. And as you go up, you see that kind of dotted line all the way across the graph. It says Mazama. That was a volcano that exploded around 7,700 years ago. So any place in the it was in Washington State, but any place within hundreds of kilometers of that volcano, you can find this band, and it gives you a date. Coming forward in time, if you look across the top, you can see that around 11,000 years ago, Douglas fir began to appear. And in fact, it continues to be a dominant species. And not only is the Garry Oak ecosystem rare, but we're in a kind of a rare coastal Douglas fir zone, of which Garry Oak is a part. So Douglas fir continues. And then you can see that actually around 7,000 years ago, Garry Oak was more common than it is now. Going all the way across to the top, you see grasses, and grasses were abundant around 10,000 years ago, and it indicates that it was probably an open landscape. And then as you can see, the trees became more and more common. So this is how people who study past climate and past vegetation can reconstruct what it looked like in the past. So here's what I imagine. This is what the landscape might have looked like. So earlier we looked at the mural. This is what an image I took in Alaska, close to the Arctic Circle, but this might be what southern Vancouver Island looked like just as the ice was leaving. And I have a couple other images. These are blurry, they're scanned from prints, but this is how Dr. Richard Hebda used to do this work. He's retired now, but I joined him on a field trip and on northern Vancouver Island to take a sediment core from a lake for one of his graduate student studies. So here's the helicopter flying in Richard's raft. And then there, unfortunately, it was a snowy day. There is Richard's grad student, David Mazzucci, floating on the raft, and we pulled the raft out into the middle of the lake and then anchored it as well as we could. It's a small pond, actually. And then you can see that white tube that David just pounded into the lake sediment. And then on the right side is what the tube looked like, the contents of the tube being sliced, and then they can be analyzed year by year, or actually, each one of those chunks is probably several dozen years, maybe hundreds of years. So any questions about how paleobotanists reconstruct past climates? And I'll stop sharing.
We don't have any questions yet, but someone says, really fascinating. Thanks, Ken.
And I guess you couldn't hear me there. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Liz.
Okay. Yeah, I was somehow muted. Anyway, sorry. Thank you so much for that, Ken. I love being reminded of how ancient the landscape is that we're in. We forget how old Earth is, and even how old southern Vancouver Island is. That is really, really key to remember, I think. I'm glad you're doing that research and not me, Ken. That blows my mind. Yeah, so if there's any questions, we go ahead and type them in the chat, and we'll be sure to ask Ken. He's sticking around here with us till the very end. But I'm going to turn it back to Emma Jane.
There was a
Right.
question. I do not know if this is a question for Ken or not, but this was a comment of, we have Jeffrey shooting star in Paradise Meadows. Is that a different species probably than the ones that we saw here, or would that be the same one?
So the species of the shooting star that is on southern Vancouver Island, from my understanding, is the Hendersons shooting star, or it's also called the broadleaf shooting star. That's one of the more common ones on the southern part of the island. But right now, Liz and I are right up at the very summit of Mill Hill. So maybe we'll give you a nice kind of view of the meadows down here from the top.
Yeah, so Emma Jane that's north. So I'm
This
gonna
is
go,
north back here.
yeah, and we'll go this way. We'll go over.
And I want you to notice there's a lot of kind of a bushy plant here with bright yellow flowers. So this plant here is not a native plant. So this is called Scotch broom, and it's an invasive species. So that means that Scotch broom was brought here from far away, so from Europe. And Scotch broom, unfortunately, grows really, really well here. And so it's become a bit of an invasive species that outcompetes a lot of the native flowers. So here in the Garry Oak Meadow, there's lots of diversity naturally. So like from what we were looking at, those wildflowers, Liz and I barely walked at all, and we saw so many different kinds of plants. So the Garry Oak Meadows actually have the highest diversity of plants of any terrestrial ecosystem in Canada. So naturally, Garry Oak Meadows are very diverse, which means there's lots of different kinds of plants that naturally grow here. But with these invasive species like the Scotch broom that come in, and what they do is they outcompete a lot of those native species, and so they threaten the diversity. So what I like to think of for understanding why diversity is so important for an ecosystem is I think of the ecosystem like a grocery store. So if you can imagine, the grocery store is empty most of the year, but then all of a sudden, say when the Scotch broom is flowering, now the grocery store is full of food. So if you didn't understand the needs of the people using the grocery store, you might think, oh, well, that's really efficient. The people don't have any food, and then all of a sudden at one time of year, the grocery store is full of food, and they are, say, full of bananas, all one kind of food. So if you didn't understand what humans need, you might say, oh, well, that's really efficient. But then as people, we think about that and we would go, oh, well, that wouldn't work for us because we need lots of different kinds of food at all different kinds of the year. So that's kind of the way I like to think about why diversity is really important in ecosystems, is because the lots of different plants, they all bloom at different times. They all provide food or shelter at different times of year. So these invasive species can be a really big threat to the health of an ecosystem. So here at Mill Hill, we have a restoration project where volunteers can sign up to come out with regional park staff, and they remove invasive plants like this Scotch broom. So later on in the link, we'll have in the comments, we'll have a link to where you can sign up if you're interested in helping to protect the diversity of these amazing places like the Garry Oak Meadow. There's a link there that you can sign up and join to help out.
So even in the pandemic, people can, because it's outside.
Yeah, so because it's outside, obviously we're not doing huge groups of people because of the pandemic, but it's even something to keep in mind for the future. That might be something, it's really fun to get out with a group of people and to do something that is really good for the environment. So
Well, thanks for that, Emma Jane. Yeah, Adria, go ahead and pop those in there whenever you like. And I see there's a little chat conversation going on. I think Ken was answering somebody's typewritten question, so that's great, but let me know if we need to add anything.
Yeah, there was some great questions. One was, what is the largest wildflower there? And the answer was, it's probably Camis. It can be up to 120 centimeters tall, and Ken also agreed with that as well. And then there was a question about the variety of different plants in different areas, and Ken also said that there's 14 vegetation zones that are defined by the dominant tree species, and so there's it's a widespread across many veg zones of different types of flowers. BC is quite diverse.
It is very diverse. Yeah, thanks for adding that information, Ken.
Yeah, and what I'll add too is that Mill Hill Regional Park, there's actually a very high amount of rare plants as well. So there's lots of rare wildflowers that are either red listed or they were not commonly found. So this park is also really important for protecting rare species as well.
Yeah, that's great to mention, because I think
Yeah.
so many of us, we're just so used to recreation parks where we can, go with our friends and family and have a great time outside, which is really important.
Mhm.
But this is also where increasingly we're protecting species and
Mhm.
ecosystems. Yeah.
And one of the best things that you can do to protect these wildflower species is when you're visiting a park to stay on the trails. Because when you're walking off the trail, you're compacting the soil, you're making it so that it's easier for the invasive plants to come up. And then like we talked about with the Camis, where there's underground bulbs, you might be stepping on, plants that even if it's in the wintertime and you can't, it looks like there's no plants, there's probably lots of, roots and things that are underground or even seeds that you could be disturbing. So one of the best ways you can help is to stay on trails. And then of course, I know it's so tempting when you see beautiful wildflowers to want to pick them. But what happens when you do that is then the wildflowers can't go to seed. So what I like to do instead is I like to continue visiting the same place at different times. And I like to kind of see, oh, look at that wildflower has gone to seed. That's what it looks like now. Or another really fun thing to do is just, to take some pictures with you. So instead of picking the wildflower, you can take a nice picture and show your friends and family. Or you can invite them to join you next time you go to the park and show them those things that you saw.
Thanks for that, Emma. Great reminder. We all need that reminder. Anything else in there, Jenny?
Yeah, there's another question is, how long does it take you to discover a new wildflower? I think that may be for Ken, possibly.
Oh, like maybe a new species that hasn't been.
That's a very interesting question.
It is.
Ken, do you mind unmuting yourself and asking and answering that question?
Yeah, could you state the question again?
Yeah, for sure. How long does it take you to discover a new wildflower? Or not wildflower, just flowers in general or other plants?
How long does it take to discover them? Well, there's very few new species of plants being found now. There's lots of new species of fungi and insects and spiders being discovered, but very few new species of plants are being found.
Mm.
When have you ever discovered a new species, Ken?
I've discovered 3 in Hawaii.
Oh,
Cool. And I see you also answered a question in the Q&A that was, how do you think the landscape, changes throughout time in the future compared to the past? And you answered with, the prediction is that as the climate becomes drier, there will be fewer trees, more grasslands. Hard to say if it will resemble any existing ecosystems or will be different. And there's also one other question is, could you know if a tree went extinct in Canada?
Yeah, that would be fairly easy to tell because trees typically produce a lot of pollen, especially conifers. And so if you looked in the pollen record going back thousands of years, and you're seeing a tree present and the presence of its pollen, and then suddenly it's gone, you could say it went extinct in Canada. There's pretty good evidence that cedar only arrived here about 6,000 years ago.
Thank you so much for those answers. Those are all the ones that we have right now.
Oh, we lost you. Are we back?
Yes, we are back.
Okay. Anything else, Jenny, before I close up?
Nope, that's about it.
Okay. Bear with me here. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think you turned your camera off instead of flipping it by accident.
Yeah, no, it was actually something more exciting than that. Take my mask off. All right, well, happy Earth Day, everybody. Emma Jane is in the background there. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for just being engaged and sending us those questions. And Ken, really great to have you in there as well. I love having the chat going at the same time. And I hope you've got a little bit of a snippet of how beautiful it is up here on Mill Hill. If you can get to Mill Hill, please come up. You've got to see it for yourself. And if not, just get out to the place that's closest to you and your neighborhood, and join us in May for the BioBlitz. And also, Emma Jane, there was a BioBlitz CRD Parks is doing as well. Do you want to quickly mention that?
We do. So for the CRD, for the first time, we're having a biodiversity challenge on iNaturalist. So on the May long weekend from May 21st to 24th, you can participate and basically
Oh, Liz, can you actually go closer? We can't quite hear very
Sorry.
well.
Okay. And I'm having technical difficulties. I have noticed with my gimbal, Jenny. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so to participate, all you need is to download the free iNaturalist app, or you can use the website, and then just you can join the CRD Biodiversity Challenge to participate.
And the information will be on the website. Sorry, we're crooked. The equipment's breaking down even as we speak to you. It's Mother Earth telling us we need to sign off the technology and go breathe the fresh air. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, I hope. And this is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Emma Jane. Thanks, Ken. Bye-bye.